Welcome aboard Just Jets with your captain, Matt O'Leary. Buckle up and enjoy the ride.
Hello and welcome to episode number 26 of Just Jets. What's going on? I'm Matt O'Leary here to talk some New York Jets football with you for the next half hour or so. Excited to be here. Have a lot of questions to get into this week, so I'm going to keep the monologue or the beginning stuff short. And I wanted to start by talking about LeVeon Bell. So that's where we're going to start this week before we get into the questions. And thank you, as always, for all the questions. And please remember, wherever you're listening to this, to make sure to subscribe and give a rating and review. It really helps me out a lot, and I really appreciate that. Thank you so much. I love all the support from this. This is my favorite thing that I get to do each week, and I absolutely love it. So let's get started with LeVeon Bell and why I think he is as motivated as ever. And I know that he said earlier in the offseason he's the best version of himself. He just registered at 4% body fat getting tested, which NFL running backs is about double that. They're usually about 8 to 12% body fat, which is insane that LeVeon is as fit as he is. He's in the best shape of his life for sure. Is he in the best mode for football? Is he in the best position to put up career numbers? He thinks so. I don't know if I would go that far. I would think he was in a better situation in Pittsburgh than he is right now with the New York Jets. No disrespect to the Jets' offensive line, quarterback, and head coach, but I don't think they're in the same stratosphere as what the Pittsburgh Steelers were working with a few years ago when LeVeon Bell was really at his absolute best. But there's no doubt in my mind that LeVeon Bell is extremely motivated. And the reason for that is I would assume was embarrassed by his performance last year, and I really don't think it's all his fault. 789 yards rushing, 3 touchdowns, receiving-wise, 461 yards and 1 touchdown. The Jets' offensive line, as I talked about yesterday in my video, was brutal last year. They were ranked 31st in offensive line DVOA, and I'd argue that they were the worst unit in the NFL. When you looked at their Week 1 starters and looked at their Week 1 starters projected to this year. So in a year difference, they're bringing in 5 new starters. Alex Lewis is the only one who was brought in via the trade last year, so he didn't even start with the team in training camp or Week 1. He's the only returning starter. You drafted Mekhi Becton, who I'm extremely, extremely excited about. Alex Lewis is brought back. Connor McGovern, I think, is a great signing at center. Right guard, Greg Van Roten's expected to take over. I think he's, a solid starter. He's not great. He's good. He's a good starter. And on the right side, George Fant is probably my biggest question mark there, but I would definitely argue that this is an improved offensive line. And to me, my expectations for LeVeon Bell is 1,500 all-purpose yards. I think he's close to 1,000 yards rushing this year, which is great. I think he adds another 500 or 600 receiving yards. If he gives you more than 1,500, perfect. But my minimum expectation is 1,500, especially when you look at how his contract is constructed. If he doesn't give you that kind of production, you could easily move on from him and not hamstring yourself with the cap situation. You'll save some money there. And I definitely think it's a possibility that they do that. I'm not necessarily advocating for that right now. I want to see how the season plays out. If he puts up really, really good numbers and is a top 10 back in the league, then yeah, I'm probably bringing him back for year 3 and beyond that. But I think the motivation that he has going into this year is going to be huge. He underperformed last year, mostly because of the resources around him. I mean, maybe he wasn't in the greatest football shape. Sure, I'll say that much is on him. But when you look at the offensive line, when you look at the play calling and the quarterback play, it was tough for him to perform. Granted, when Darnold came back, he was a much, much bigger upgrade over what they were throwing out there with Trevor Siemian and Luke Falk and all that. It was pretty brutal for a few weeks in a row. But LeVeon wasn't really given all too many favors. I don't think he was utilized properly. And I'm hoping that in 2020, with an improved offensive line, with Sam Darnold fully healthy, and hopefully with another year in the system of Adam Gase, who expands a little bit more. That's my hope and my prayer, is that Adam Gase decides to expand on the offense a little bit more, that he could be producing 1,500 plus all-purpose yards, which, again, should be the ultimate, the benchmark, right? That should be, obviously 2,000 is perfect, like we would love 2,000 yards. Not everyone's Christian McCaffrey, but if you can get 15, 1,600 all-purpose yards, you're in pretty good shape from Le'Veon Bell. And I think he's extremely motivated coming into the year, which is just awesome to see. And he has really transitioned into one of the leaders of this team in my eyes. And I definitely think we'll talk about it more in the voicemails, but a captaincy might be in place for Le'Veon Bell this year. To the voicemails we go. First one is Eddie from North Carolina wants to talk about cap space with the New York Jets.
Hey, Matt. This is Eddie from North Carolina. I've called Ryan's show a few times.
Awesome.
He's a pretty cool guy. I figured I'd give you a call.
Absolutely.
I wanted to talk about the additional cap space we have and Yannick Ngakoue or Jadeveon Clowney. My thoughts are, since we got an extra $7.5 million because Mosley opted out, and we have another $7.5 million because they cut Winters, that's about $15 million. I figure we could do one of two things. We could put together a trade package now that we have extra cap space and try to get Yannick from Jacksonville Jaguars, which would absolutely be my first choice. Don't get me wrong. I think he's a fantastic player. But
Agree.
my second is, and I know you don't agree with this, but I think if we gave Jadeveon Clowney an incentive-based package on a one-year show-me deal, that could work. And what I mean by that is give him a base starting salary of $10 million and then have incentives like, A, don't get penalties, and if you don't get penalties, you get an extra $1 million, $2 million. And B, if you get double-digit sacks, you get another $1 million or $2 million. Tell me your thoughts. I think that's the only way I would go to bring him in if he went for it, and go Jets.
Yeah, really appreciate the insight there, Eddie. I think you're onto something with the Jadeveon Clowney and the incentive-based deal. As you mentioned, I'm not a fan of Jadeveon Clowney's game. I think he's a good player. I think he's slightly overrated. I think he's a much better run defender than he is a pass rusher. But maybe I would take that swing if you could tell me that he would take it for $10 million and the other stuff is incentive-based. But I'd be lying to you if I said that I wasn't worried about the penalties being an issue, because when you look at this Jets team, one of their biggest issues over the last few years has been the amount of penalties that they've given up. I do think that Joe Douglas is trying to change the culture. I don't know if Jadeveon Clowney is that kind of guy. I think that's been the most intriguing proposal that I've seen so far when it comes to Jadeveon Clowney. So I'd be more willing to accept that than just signing him straight up for $14 million or whatever it would be to get him on a one-year deal. I am assuming he wants to play, so his asking price is certainly coming down. Again, I think you're spot on with Ngakoue being the number one choice. I think he's a better pass rusher, which is what the Jets really need. Their run defense is pretty good as is. I don't think they need to be looking to add another elite run defender. But if you can get an elite pass rusher in Yannick Ngakoue, I'd be more willing to do that. Thank you for the question, Eddie. Next up is Phil, who wants to talk about the wide receiving core.
Hey, Phil. Hey, Matt, it's Phil. Oh, my God. Hey, Matt, it's Phil. There's one thing that I've always been bothered about, and it's the wide receiving core. Robbie Anderson just left. I never really liked him.
Okay.
It seemed that he was a bit full of himself. But, I mean, I've been a Jets fan for, 10 years now, and our best wide receiver has been Santonio Holmes, maybe? I don't know. And
I'd argue Marshall, but
when you
fine.
look at these teams, the Chiefs, the Browns, they all have the legit number one wide receiver. And that's why I think they could go far, because they have that guy. They have the guy that could take them. Maybe not the Browns today, Baker Mayfield, but that's not really the point. All I'm saying is the Jets need a reliable number one wide receiver. And I have a lot of expectation for Denzel Mims. I really think he could be that guy. He's big, he's fast, but I have no clue, because that's just it just needs to be fixed, in my opinion. The wide receiver range. We fixed the O-line, we fixed some of the defense. Now I think we need to fix the wide receiving core to really help Sam Darnold. Maybe a trade. I don't know. Let me know what you think, and go Jets.
Yeah, I definitely think the wide receiving core needs work. Listen, I'm a huge fan of the Mims pick. That was my favorite pick in the draft, I would say, just because of the value where you got him. But to expect him to put up wide receiver one numbers in year one, I think is probably a little bit of a stretch. I'm going to talk about my expectations for him in a later call in this episode, but I don't know if you could expect him to put up 900 receiving yards in year one. If he does, great. I would say he would be ahead of schedule. Now, in year two and beyond that, yeah, I think expectation is that he takes that step forward as a more reliable outside receiver that's giving you at minimum 900, pushing 1,000 plus receiving yards every year. That's where you want Denzel Mims to be for sure. As far as the rest of the wide receiving group goes, Jamison Crowder is good in the slot. He's not going to give you more than 800 receiving yards probably. And he's a slot receiver. He's not like your prototypical number one. Good player, but you need more in your wide receiver room than just Jamison Crowder. You also have Perryman, who flashed at the end of last year, no doubt about it, but hasn't really put it together over the course of his career. So if you think he's a wide receiver one, you're basing that on the second half of last season's production, which is fine. I'm rooting for that. I hope he is that receiver that he was the last 5 weeks of the year. That would be a home run for the Jets. I just think it's risky to bet on him for that. And I'm with you. I don't think a trade for a receiver would be the worst idea with the amount of draft capital you just got. Maybe you sit on it and build through the draft. I'd be fine with that scenario. But at the same time, if you'd want to trade for and extend a Allen Robinson or a Juju Smith-Schuster, I wouldn't write that off so quickly, because it's not like you have 1,000-yard receivers coming in through these doors every day. And you want to make life as easy for Sam Darnold as possible. So I'm not opposed to trading for a wide receiver. I'm also not opposed to keeping that draft capital and building through the draft. I really see both sides of that one. But I don't think you're wrong in your evaluation of the wide receiver room. I definitely think it needs some help. So thank you for the question, Phil. Next up is Mike from Port St. Lucie. It's a little bit of a longer one. He wants to give his take on opt-outs.
Yeah, Matt, Mike, Port St. Lucie, the new Long Island South. All right, listen, I had to chime in on this C.J. Mosley opting out. In fact, this whole opt-out scenario for the entire NFL blows, period. Okay? This is a team sport. And if the NFL decides that they're going to move forward and put a product out there on the field and give the players that are getting paid millions upon millions, they're fabulously wealthy beyond their wildest imaginations, okay? And they have the opportunity to play, okay? There's no opting out. I'm sorry. If the league decides and the teams decide in all their ultimate wisdom that, it's safe enough to play, these guys are world-class athletes, they're in tremendous health, and it should be a no-brainer. These guys are selfish, all right? They're all getting coddled. I'm sorry. Enough is enough. I don't want to get into the whole political end of it, so I'm not going to.
We're not doing that.
I'm talking about, and this just has to stop, all right? Because years ago this would be unheard of, period. So these guys got to play, and that's the end of the. Listen, like you said, this is a tough year for them. They're not going to be, they're not going to get to the playoffs. They're going to be improved. It's a brutal schedule, and probably. So they're not going to lose by 3 now. They're going to lose by 7 or 8. So, that's what that boils down to. But, still you want to have a more competitive team on the field. And, listen, we just need, we need something to be positive about as fans, okay? And this stuff, it just keeps hitting the fan. And it just keeps hitting you in the face. And it's like you're getting beaten down. I mean, last time I mentioned about, the team bringing in name ID, to make a splash, and really more for the fans. And yeah, I'm not a big Clowney fan, but they need to do something just for the fans. This is a huge market in New York, so they gotta, you gotta entice the fans in some way. You gotta give them a reason to hope, a reason to come back. So, I'm pretty passionate about this. I think you can tell that. But anyway, listen, that's it. Just wanted to chime in, give you my 2 cents. Don't forget to eat your green vegetables, okay? Plenty of green veggies, right? Stay with it, buddy. You make this talk show host thing look really easy. You do a great job. Keep it up. I'll talk to you soon.
Appreciate the kind words there, Mike. Especially, I really do appreciate the questions and stuff every week. No doubt. I don't agree with your take though. I think I'll say it like this. I understand why some fans might be frustrated with the amount of money that these guys make compared to, what regular Joes who go out and work 9 to 5 make. I understand the frustration, but at the same time, their skill set that they have allows them to get paid that amount of money based on what the market dictates. And it's a lot, no doubt about it. It's a lot of money, but it's also a very risky job. I would argue that the NFL is probably the biggest risk in sports in terms of, 1, injury, and 2, the virus, because it's an airborne virus and you're right up in each other's faces for 60 minutes hitting each other. And I think if you are in a league that has a union, the players' union, and you are allowed to bargain an opt-out option, which these guys aren't getting their full salary not to play. They're getting a stipend, but it's not their full salary. I think you should have the option. And I understand both sides of the coin. I understand the guys who want to go out there and play for their guys. I love it. At the same time, I can't fault somebody for making a decision for their own benefit or the benefit of their family. We don't know. Maybe one of these guys, their mother, or they have a relative in the house that they're living with or that they're close with who would be a risk for the virus. It's a lot more in depth than I think that we're being led on to see. We only see the surface. We see the 27-year-old athlete opting out. But maybe we'll just use the example of CJ Mosley. Maybe he's not worried about himself with the virus personally, but maybe he could be, if he does get it, maybe he's worried about passing it on to somebody else who could be a threat, or could be, a threat to the virus. It's tough. This is such a unique situation. I really can't get on the players for opting out. I just can't do it. I think, based on what we've seen, most of these, I understand the people who go out and they have to work, and the essential workers, I have the utmost respect for them. A lot of people have had the option of working from home through the pandemic, myself included. But I think that you should be allowed the option. And while it might stink that your favorite player opted out in whatever your situation is, especially if you're a team that's trying to win a Super Bowl, but I can't get mad at a player for choosing his own safety and the safety of his family over playing in the NFL. I can't do it. I can't get mad over it. So I understand your frustration with it. I'm not on the same wavelength as you did there, Mike. Next up is John David, and he is calling in from New Jersey. He wants to talk about Sam Darnold and the rest of the roster.
All right, John David from New Jersey. Hey, Matt, just wanted your thoughts on Sam and kind of the bad transition that he's been stuck in for the Jets in terms of roster and culture. Joe Douglas obviously left with a bunch of contract and depth issues across the roster, and I was thinking that he wants to rebuild this roster, obviously, from the ground up from McCagnon's era. And I think that Sam Darnold got stuck in this really bad transition phase where, he is no longer going to be on his rookie contract. Obviously, the roster is not going to be in the position that he's been used to help win football games, even though he did go 7-9 last year. So I was just wondering, where do you think the media is going to start coming in and giving him all these issues where he's regressing, he's not improving, even though the team hasn't really been able to do anything to help him really exceed in this league? Thank you.
Yeah, really good question there. I agree with pretty much everything you said there. Darnold hasn't been given any favors, and I think that's what Joe Douglas is trying to do now. What he did in free agency in the draft, he told Sam Darnold's parents that he's going to protect his son. He goes out their son. He goes out and then signs a bunch of offensive linemen, drafts a bunch of offensive linemen, and they're getting after it. I think there's definitely more work to be done, and I don't think it's a perfect situation going into year 3 with Sam Darnold. I think we are already starting to see some of the media turn on him in the sense that we're getting the Trevor Lawrence stories. How many times have we seen that from the Daily News had it? I'm sorry. It was the Post had it, NJ.com had it, and another site this week I saw had something on it. Maybe Bleacher Report. Don't quote me on that. There was I saw a third. Oh no, Draft Network. That's what it was. That was the third one. It was Draft Network. I just remembered. But I definitely think that it's unfair because if you're just looking at the surface level, he's had a ton of issues. I want to see what he does this year, and I firmly believe that he is the guy. I do. I'm a Darnold believer, and I think he proves it that this year. So thank you so much for the question, John David. Next up is Ronnie from the Bronx, and he wants to talk about Jamal Adams.
Hey, Matt, how you doing? This is Ronnie from the Bronx in New York. Listen, I'm calling, man, 55 years old. I lost some of my buddies who were Jet fans, man. These are all people who were, like, over the years hoping that, every time we got a new coach that they were going to be it. I'm tired of this every time promises things are going to get better, wait till next year. It's just nonsense, if you ask me. The Jamal Adams stuff was a total tragedy, man. I mean, the Jets have never had anybody on the team with his desire to win. So it's terrible. Let me know what you think about that, man. I watch you all the time. All right, take care. Peace.
Appreciate the question. Thanks so much, Ronnie. I'm definitely frustrated with how things ended with Jamal Adams. In a perfect world, I would have hoped the Jets would have been able to extend him after this season. But to me, Jamal made it very obvious that he didn't want to be here anymore. So I was happy with the return that Joe Douglas was able to get for Jamal. While I think it's completely fair to be frustrated with the entire process, how that went down, I didn't like the way that he was handling the contract dispute with the Jets. And I think ultimately it was the right choice to move on, but I completely understand where these fans are coming from who are upset about it. And listen, Jamal's a great player on the field. There's no denying that. It was probably one of the best Jets draft picks in the last 15 years, probably. But it stinks that it wasn't able to work out, but I think he made it very obvious that he didn't want to be here anymore. And we saw that with how much he was celebrating when he got traded to Seattle. So I think that's the main reason why he's not here. Next up is Michael from Brooklyn and wants to talk about Joe Douglas and Adam Gase.
Hey, Matt, I love the show. This is Michael Prunty. I'm calling from Brooklyn, New York. Big fan of the show. Listen almost every day now. Just one thing I have that's kind of a question or basically maybe more of a statement. I keep hearing you say that, you don't think Joe Douglas and you don't think Adam Gase is going to be the coach next year. You think that if they have a down year, Joe Douglas is going to move on from Adam Gase. I just don't see the logic in what you're saying there. Adam Gase was pivotal in bringing Joe Douglas into the fold here. Joe Douglas is not going to, turn on him. He's going to back him for right or wrong, give him another year after this year, especially with all the, pandemic stuff and all the hurdles that he's going to have to go through. I really think it's wishful thinking that you think that Joe Douglas is going to turn on his friend and the guy who got him the job and, get him fired and bring someone else in here. I just want to see what is your logic behind that. Why do you think that makes sense? Anyway, like I said, enjoy the show and hope you have a good day. Bye.
Yes, thank you so much for the question. I'll gladly give you the reasoning behind my take. And Connor Rogers, who works for Bleacher Report, has talked about this a ton as well. He's someone who I respect a whole lot when it comes to the Jets and the NFL and his insight. Joe Douglas was someone who's been on the radar for GM jobs for a long, long time. He is someone who everyone thought he was one of the next guys to get that go at a GM. That's just to put that. It's not Douglas is more than qualified, is what I wanted to get out of this. I think the narrative that Adam Gase and Joe Douglas have this really tight bond and that they're all great friends is really overblown. They worked together for 1 year half a decade ago in 2015 in Chicago. Both of them lasted just 1 year in Chicago. Their paths crossed for 1 year. And maybe Adam Gase and Douglas working together that year formed a relationship initially. I will give you that. But to say that they're attached at the hip and they go one in lockstep together, I'm not really buying. Now, I might buy that Adam Gase gave his stamp of approval on the hire and said, yeah, I like Joe Douglas. I think he would be good for the job, but I don't think it was Adam Gase who went to Chris Johnson, I guess, and said, you have to hire Joe Douglas. And on top of that, Douglas got a 6-year deal and Gase got a 4-year deal. So what does that tell you? That Douglas has the longer leash than Gase. I know he was brought in here second, but he would have to have the longer leash than Gase. He has the more lucrative deal. He has the longer term deal. And Gase has been a head coach in the league for 4 years now. This is Joe Douglas' first or second. So the leash on Joe is significantly longer than the leash on Adam Gase. And I think if they go 6-10 this year, I would say that he's going to move on from him. I think that would be the logical thing to do. I don't think Joe Douglas and Adam Gase are as buddy-buddy as some people like to believe. I think that, yes, they've crossed paths working in Chicago in 2015, but does that mean that they're in lockstep and they are, doing everything together? They're attached at the hip? I don't buy it. I really don't. I think that Joe Douglas would move on if given the opportunity. So I don't really care. I don't like that narrative. I don't think it's a very accurate. It's a narrative often brought up, but I don't think it's an accurate one. Next is Jay from the Bronx, who would like to talk about Adam Gase.
Hey, Matt, this is Jay from the Bronx. I just wanted to make a statement. Please, please, please stop hating on Adam Gase. It's just something that's gotten to the point where everybody just say, oh, yeah, and Gase sucks. Yeah, and when we change the coach, oh, yeah, the coach is terrible. The coach is terrible. Team lost these games, so the coach is terrible. This player didn't play well. Oh, the coach is... Everything is Adam Gase's fault, and it's not Adam Gase's fault. It's just crazy. I love your program. I listen to it every chance I get. I try to follow you. But it's just driving me insane when really smart people like yourself just keeps taking shots at Adam Gase. There is no way Adam Gase did anything to deserve the hate that he gets from all of these fans. He did nothing to deserve this hate. I mean, the guy is not Bill Belichick, but he's not nearly shown us to be a terrible coach. He did wonders with what he had. So what if he's quirky? So what if he has googly eyes? Nobody liked Belichick until he started winning. Everybody thought he was a weirdo and that he was a psycho guy in the hood and everything, but he won games.
I don't know.
So Adam Gase has been here 1 season, and the team improved by 3 games. And he had a friggin' medical squad team, like infirmary team. Please, just stop killing Gase. Give the man a chance. Everybody's just writing him off and complaining about him for everything. Thank you.
If a lot of smart people, in Jay's words, if a lot of smart people are killing Adam Gase, what does that tell you? I'll leave it at that. Next up is James from Wisconsin, who wants to talk about Joe Douglas.
Hey, Jets Nation. This is James from Wisconsin. Hope everyone's staying safe and healthy. Just got a few things I got to say. So, people got to remember, Joe Douglas is on a 6-year deal.
There you go.
Doesn't really mean he doesn't want to win now, but he is building his own roster. You see all these cuts, Quincy, Brian Winters, the Trent Cannon, the list goes on. But also, Jets Nation, we got to calm down and just cherish the memories that these players made for us. For example, Jamal, he's a highlight machine, but never forget strip sack against Daniel Jones.
Yep.
Just an elite play. Also, Quincy, if you watch his highlight tape, dude looks like an elite receiver when healthy. His touchdown against the Browns on the boundary made like 4 people miss. Just elite. So going back to this Douglas on a 6-year deal thing, this is why I don't think we're going to sign Clowney. Even if we do sign Clowney and win an extra game or two, that doesn't align with his plan of a 6-year deal necessarily. So I don't have a question. I just want to leave it at that. I just hope everyone understands that the Jets are playing it in the long game. Douglas has to build his own roster from scratch because the previous GMs left him with bare bones. So, jet up, baby.
I think you're spot on. I think you really hit it on the head, James. You're right. He's on a long-term deal, 6 years, and it's going to be a slow build. And that's what we saw with the acquiring of draft picks in the Jamal Adams deal. So it is going to be a slow build here, and I think Jets fans are going to have to be patient. It's annoying, but I think it's the truth, unfortunately. Next up is Damien, wants to talk about the AFC East.
Hey, Matt. My name is Damien. I'm calling from Long Island, New York. 2 things. First of all, I just wanted to say I love your podcast. You kind of
Thank you.
You kind of inspired me to make my own, actually. So that's what I've been doing with my time recently. But anyway,
awesome. That's great, man.
My question was, I wanted to just ask you on, especially with the new playoff rules coming into the NFL next year, it is actually quite possible for every single team in one division to make the playoffs. But my question was, I wanted to ask you on your opinion on the outcome of the season for the Jets on a divisional standpoint. So what I mean by that is, you know, the AFC East, a lot of NFL analysts are looking at like a weaker division, but in my opinion, I'm just not buying it. You know, you got Josh Allen on the Bills looking like the real deal right now, especially with their top tier defense. You know, you have to remember you still have Bill Belichick in your division, especially with a reigning MVP and Cam Newton. That's just the Patriots just are not a team to count out right now.
I agree.
You got over there in Miami, they got one of the biggest draft prospects in the past couple, like 5 years, I would say. So, you know, in a matter of the Jets, how are you feeling like the AFC East is going to roll out this year, and how do you think the Jets are going to be doing against, you know, what could be some of those high-powered offenses, especially being ran by, you know, a reigning MVP in Cam Newton? You got Josh Allen, and you got either Ryan Fitzpatrick or Tua. You know, the Dolphins, in my opinion, are more of a throw-up team, but you know, we don't know how they're going to do.
Mm-hmm.
But you still got the Jets going 7-9 with their starting quarterback missing about a quarter of the season because of mono. So I don't know. I'm a Raiders fan, so I'm on the complete opposite coast of you guys, so I don't really pay attention too much to like what's going on over there. But I just wanted to ask you how you think that the Jets are going to pan out in this division, in which, in my opinion, I would say is a little more higher in competition. Thanks, man.
Really good question. I like it a lot. So I think I'll do it like this. I'll give what I think each team's going to finish record-wise this year, and then how I think the Jets are going to do in the division this year. To me, the Patriots are still the number 1 team until proven otherwise, especially after they got Cam Newton. I'm a big fan of Cam's game. I think that it's going to work well with Josh McDaniels, and I think we're going to see Bill Belichick implement some different things. I think it's going to work. They'll probably be, I'll say they go 11-5. I think the Bills are a wild card team that are like a 10-6 team, 9-7 maybe, somewhere in that range. I would say the Jets finish 3rd at 7-9, let's say, and then I would say the Dolphins are like a 6-10 team. That being said, I think that the Jets split with all 3 teams. So I think they win 1 and lose 1. So they go 3-3 in the division. Long term, I mean, the Patriots, it's really tough to say long-term if Cam's going to be the long-term guy or what, but I'd have to imagine that they're going to be in the mix until they prove otherwise again. Buffalo, I think, is going to go as far as Josh Allen takes them. Their defense is excellent. They have a ton of playmakers, but I think Allen has to do a little bit more in the passing game before I look at them as a Super Bowl threat. The Jets, I think they have the quarterback. I think that their defense is fine. I think they need improvement at the wide receiver and offensive line positions and to add more depth throughout the roster, an edge rusher as well on the defensive side before I'm looking at them as a threat. And the Dolphins are in year one of their rebuild. It's going to be a little bit before they come along. I think if Tua stays healthy, he could be good in this league. But for right now, I think the Jets are about a 500 team, 7 or 8 wins this year, and I think they're going 3-3 in the division. It's not an easy one, though. It definitely is not an easy division. So thank you so much for the question. Next up is Hans from Poughkeepsie. My bad, Hans, on what happened last week. I honestly just read the transcription. I didn't even listen to the question first, so that's on me. But let's get into Hans, who wants to talk about captains this year.
What's up, Matt? It's Hans from Poughkeepsie. And with CJ Mosley opting out, it got me wondering, out of all the captains from last year, only 2 are returning. Who do you think can step up and be a captain of this Jets team? Who do you think can lead them next and be that man in the locker room who steps up and really is the voice of this team? Because the returning captains from last year are Sam Darnold and Steve McClendon.
Right.
And I think they will get captaincy again. I really like Steve McClendon. He's a big voice on that defense. He's a very underrated player on our defense.
Agree.
But just again, let me know who you think the captains will be for next year. In my opinion, I think one of them should be LeVeon Bell because of how he's stepped up, he's matured, and since he's been a Jet, he's really been that locker room guy, that enthusiastic guy, and that hard-working guy that every team wants. All right, so let me know who you think the next captains will be. And as always, go Jets, baby.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that Le'Veon Bell should be a captain this year. Both Darnold and McClendon coming back, I agree, are going to be captains. For everything you just said with Le'Veon, he has been a pro's pro since coming over. Hats off to him on that one. As far as potential other captains, I know it's his first year with the team, but Connor McGovern, I think, could be a captain. On the defensive side, I think Avery Williamson could be a captain. Bradley McDougall could be a captain. I have faith in those guys for sure. McDougall's definitely a leader. I know both him and McGovern are in their first years with the Jets, so maybe they aren't given a captaincy. But I think they'd both be deserving. And Williamson, I think, he would be the leader of the defense without CJ Mosley, so I think he deserves a captaincy. Maybe Crowder? Maybe a sneaky choice, Jamison Crowder as a captain? That would be the only other option. I don't really see anyone else as captain material yet, but definitely Darnold, definitely Le'Veon Bell, definitely McClendon. Those 3 are givens in my eyes. And if I had to pick 2 more outside of I guess you could dress up to 6 captains, I believe. So I would say McGovern, I would say Williamson, and I would say McDougall would be my captains. Thank you so much for the question again, Hans. Next up's Frank from Staten Island, and we're going to talk a little bit about the UDFAs.
Hey, what's up, Matt? This is Frank from Staten Island. I was just curious what your opinion is on, do you think that undrafted free agents like Cager and Huff, are they guaranteed a roster spot now that there's no preseason or anything? I want to know what your take is now, because I personally think it's a bummer there's no preseason, because I like to see these guys that prove themselves. I want to know what your take is. Thanks, and go Jets.
Yeah, I really feel bad for those guys, especially I think the 2 you mentioned, especially Huff and Cager, I thought had a really good shot of making the roster. Even Lamar Jackson, the corner as well, I liked. I don't know. I don't know if they're going to be able to do enough in training camp to prove a roster spot. I think the games really help out a lot. And unfortunately, the UDFAs, I think, are going to get the brunt of this, or the fringe roster guys. And I definitely feel bad. It's going to be different. It's going to be tough this year. And like you said, I think the UDFAs are unfortunately going to be the one hit hardest from this. And I'm a nerd, so I enjoy watching the preseason to see those kind of guys play. And it stinks we're not going to be able to see them play. Next up is Josh from Woodmere, wants to talk about the NFL draft if there's no college football.
Hi, Matt. It's Josh from Woodmere. Just got a couple questions regarding the draft. Number one, if there's an NFL season this year and no college football season, do you think there'll be a draft? I think that there will, but some people don't think there'll be, so I just want to know what you think. Also, if there's no NFL season and no college football season, do you think there'll be a draft? I don't think so. And then lastly, if there is no college football, if there is no NFL draft this year, what will happen with our picks that we got on the Jamal Adams trade? I would have to assume it would just go over to the next draft, but obviously you know better, so I just want to know what you think, what will happen with those picks. And just the last thing, stat prediction for Denzel Mims in his rookie year this year. Just want to know what you'll think he'll put up. But thank you, and go Jets.
Yeah, I'll start with Mims because I think that's the easier one to get to, and then I'll go into the draft stuff. My expectation for Mims in year one, I think he's going to give you let's say 650 receiving yards and 4 receiving touchdowns. I think he'll take a leap after that. I think in year 2, he's going to put up 900, and that number is going to look a lot closer to 6 touchdowns. I would love if he gives you more than what I just predicted. I think the Jets offense is going to really spread the ball around a lot this year. I do. So I don't think there's going to be one receiver or a tight end or a back that's going to get a ton of receiving yards. Like LeVeon, I think is going to probably be around the 600 receiving yards. Crowder is probably going to be around 800. Mims, I just said around 650, 700. Perryman, I think, is probably going to be around 700-800 receiving yards. I think that if healthy, Chris Herndon could be around 700 receiving yards. We saw Griffin put up 300 last year. I think he could do the same thing again. That's a lot of guys, and I don't think there's going to be one who's pushing 1,000 yards. I think it's going to be a bunch of guys clumped together at around 700-800 receiving yards. That's just the way that I see it personally. And as far as the draft stuff goes, I think they're going to find a way to get a draft done no matter what. Even if there is no NFL or college football season, I think that they would find a way to get a draft done. I don't think it's fair to those, potentially graduating or leaving college. I don't know what they would do in that aspect of it. So I think they would find a way to do an NFL draft. If for whatever reason there wasn't one, then yeah, I would say the draft picks probably just get pushed back a year. So hopefully that answers your question, Josh. Next up is Mike from Bayshore. Wants to talk about different coaches.
Hey, Matt. This is Mike from Bayshore. I just want to say, keeping up with the show, love it. Keep it up, kid.
Thank you.
Would you pick Jim Harbaugh or Bieniemy as the next Jets coach? And by the way, your Madden game is horrible. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's the point, man. I'm not good. That's why it's funny. It was fun to go through and do. Obviously, losing the AFC Championship game is not what I was looking to do in Madden, but I think I got better as the weeks went on, I would argue. As far as the coach situation goes, I would prefer Eric Bieniemy just because I think Harbaugh has underachieved at Michigan. He's been out of the NFL for a few years now. No doubt he had success with the 49ers. He was great with them. I really just like the ceiling of Bieniemy, the Andy Reid coaching tree that Eric Bieniemy belongs to. I don't know why that was so hard for me to say. Is a good one, and I think he's going to be a good coach at this level. I'm really excited about what he's able to do, and he's essentially Andy Reid's right-hand man there. I understand that Reid is the one calling the plays, but it's not like there have been times where Bieniemy has called plays. It's not like he's never done it, and it's not like he's just sitting there twiddling his thumbs with the Pat Mahomes and Andy Reid offense. No. He has a lot that goes into the game plan and stuff like that. He's very well respected by Andy Reid, whose opinion I trust greatly. So I'm for Eric Bieniemy, I would say. Next up is Travis from Ohio. Wants to talk about the pass rush.
Hey, Matt. Travis from Ohio. Hey, after losing Jamal Adams and C.J. Mosley on defense, I think pass rush is going to be a big key, even though we haven't had any forever.
True. True.
Just wondering who you think will hopefully step up between Quentin Williams, John Franklin Myers, Jabari Zuniga, Bryce Huff, or are we going to use Ashton Davis off the edge, kind of like did with Jamal last year?
Okay.
Remember what Joe said, speed creates pressure, pressure bursts pipes. So
Amen.
He's probably our fastest guy on defense. What I think might actually help us are our secondary to get better even without Jamal, with him gone. I think we have more talent over there, so we might get some coverage sacks at least. Like either way would be helpful. Hopefully you guys step up, but anyway, F Jamal Adams. Stay healthy. Love you. Go Jets.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thank you, buddy. Really appreciate the question as always. I really like the Ashton Davis idea. It's something I haven't really thought about, to be honest with you, but it makes sense. The dude is quick, and they have two other, quality safeties that they could play back there. Maybe Ashton Davis rushing the passer is not a bad idea. It really isn't. I think Quinnen's also someone who is likely to take a year or two leap. I'm hoping he gets 8 sacks this year. That would be my hope. If he gives you 8 sacks and is more of a dominant force up the middle, great. That would be a huge plus. Zuniga, I think, is going to be a rotational piece. I don't think he's ever really going to be someone who's looked at as a starter. I think he's more of a rotational guy. Maybe he gives you a few sacks. I wouldn't bet the house on it. I really like your Davis suggestion, Joe, though. I think it's a really good idea. Last is going to be Drew from North Carolina. Thanks again, Travis, for the question. Who wants to talk about LeVeon?
Hey, Matt. This is Drew from Charlotte, North Carolina. I got a quick question for you today. Do you think that LeVeon Bell has done enough over the past year and this offseason to warrant him receiving a captain's patch? Now, of course, I'm not on the practice field. I'm not in the locker room, so I can't really accurately tell you whether he's deserving of a captain's patch. But just for everything I've seen in social media and everything that he's done this offseason, I believe he warrants a captain's patch. What do you think? Thanks.
100%. I agree with you, Drew. I know we just talked about it in one of the earlier questions, but I think he does deserve it. When you look at the leaders on this team, LeVeon, which I'll admit, hand up, surprise to me, is definitely a leader on this team. He has gone about things the right way. He had a really, really bad year last year, one of the worst years of his career. Again, likely most of it is not his fault. Some of it probably was. Maybe he wasn't in the best shape. Taking the year off probably didn't help things. But he had the right attitude all along. Gase didn't utilize him properly. He still was a good soldier throughout the whole process. He, took what Jamal said to heart. He wants to be here. Jamal clearly did not. I'm about it. I think LeVeon as a captain would make sense. I really do. I think it makes a ton of sense. So thank you so much, Drew. And thank you, everyone, this week for tuning in, getting those questions in. Really appreciate it. Make sure to tune in again next week. Every Monday, I'm giving you new episodes. But that's going to do it for me this week. Once again, I'm Matt O'Leary, and I'll talk to you next time.